So I really enjoyed the mortgage industry and having built so many partnerships with so many loan officers and understanding their world and understanding the nuances that go into the mortgage industry. Like if I can help you get a house, I can help you get anything. So again, I love a good challenge, and the home market I think is so critical to be a part of. And the reason why is because, right, when we talk about people losing significant amounts of money and not being able to build wealth, it's from the big ticket items. It's not because you went and spent $8 at Starbucks. It's because, right, you spent way too much money trying to get this home way too fast because the credit wasn't fixed, and now you're paying $1,000 a month more than you needed to, and that's what keeps people stuck. And so I think that's really what attracted me to the mortgage industry, was that it was just going to have such a magnificent impact on people's lives. Getting a home, one, can be the American dream, but if you do it the wrong way, it can be the American drain.
All right, all right, all right. Money is on my mind indeed. Yes, everybody. This is Darrin Harvey, and I am your gracious host of Financial State of Minds. This is a show where we help you get to that bag, manage that bag, and grow that bag as best as possible as we discuss financial and business literacy and anything and everything to do with buying a house. Yeah, switch that up a little bit. And I just said that because today's guest, if you guys want the best solution, the best person to help you guide you in fixing your credit or repairing your credit, improving your credit, doing what you need to do with your credit in order to get that mortgage. And I know everybody, no matter where you are, you still want a house. You're going to need to talk to this guest right here. Micah Smith, thank you for joining the show. How are you doing today?
Hi, Darren. I am so great. Thank you for having me, and I am very excited to be here today.
Thank you. Likewise. And thank you again for joining us. And so when we met, and I kind of checked out your background, I found right away, I'm like, oh, we're in the same lane. So like we're in the same lane. So I was like, oh, this is going to be great, but still kind of a newbie to the game. I've only been doing it for a couple years, and you have way more experience in your niche and your focus, which we will talk about in a second. But before that, I always like to ask, first question out the gate to my guest. How would you describe Micah Smith? Who are you?
Oh, I love that question. I ask that in interviews, and I leave it ambiguous just to see what people come up with. So I am a Colorado native, and I am a God-fearing woman, first and foremost. God is everything to me. I am married. I live in New York, and I am an athlete at heart. I played sports my entire life. I am wildly passionate about people, humanity. I truly just love people, and I believe that you are most qualified in life to help the person that you used to be. And I think something very notable about my path is that I am coming up on 7 years sober. I'm very open about my testimony, and I am the CEO and the founder of Micah Abigail LLC.
All right. Well, there's a couple things that I just learned right off the top. Okay, now I get to, sorry, listeners. Now this is for me to ask personally. You mentioned you're an athlete. That is same thing with my girlfriend. What sports did you play?
So I played every sport under the sun, but the one that I really took a liking to was volleyball. And I actually played in the Junior Olympics. I had a full ride scholarship to college, and volleyball was my jam. That was one of my favorite sports. And I rode motorcycles since I was 10 years old. So I'm a daddy's girl through and through. So if my dad did it, I did it. So and definitely, and now, and so I also competed in bodybuilding. So once I left volleyball, I actually was a bodybuilder for about 10 years. And my 40th birthday, I did my last bodybuilding competition. So NPC, which is the National Physique Committee. So it's amateur bodybuilding. I'm a bikini competitor. And so I won my last competition that I participated in, that I did for my 40th birthday. I refuse to conform to the norm that your 40s suck. I refuse.
Oh my God, yo, I would have never guessed that about you. So I'm like, okay, I'm already learning more. This is great. And then on a more, particularly sensitive topic, so you said that you're 7 years sober.
Yes, coming up this year in 2027. So January of 2027, I'll be 7 years sober.
Sober from
Alcohol.
alcohol. Okay.
Yeah, yeah. Raging alcoholic.
Oh, well, it's crazy because I mentioned this offline. My degree is in sociology, and I come from a mental health background. And my
Sure.
first job out of college that was in the field was I was a recovering counselor. So I think I mentioned there are kids in group homes. I mentioned that to you, but what I didn't mention is what they were. So there were kids that had two mental health diagnoses, addicted to two different drugs, and they committed crime. So they had to fit
Wow.
those three criteria. And basically our program, which was called Thunder Road, it was basically teenager, you committed a crime, you have all these issues. You either go to juvenile hall or you go to this program. So they would go to the program, and the program was essentially like a lighter, a pretty much a kiddie version of, honestly, prison. Like, it was structured
Sure.
just like prison. And we had, they were addicted to two different drugs minimum.
Sure.
So dealing with kids like that it was easy. It's still the most rewarding job that I've ever had, but
Sure.
it was difficult. And we definitely had like AA programs and stuff like that. So I
Yeah.
understand, one, how difficult it is to be sober. I think sometimes we hear all the stories, right? We hear so many people like you, like, I've been this many years sober, I've been missing years sober. And we, of course, society would congratulate them, but I don't think society always understands for every one of them that are like you, there's like literally 10 more who are trying and they can't get out. So congratulations on 7 years of sobriety, and not only doing that, building something that is helping others.
Sure. Absolutely. Thank you.
That's what you do. So I just want to personally thank you for that. So, but okay, so I'm just curious, what made you go from Colorado to New York?
Really great question. And it actually is how I ended up in the space that I'm in now. So I was recruited into the credit space. And so when I walked in to the office, one of the questions they were like, so if you join our firm, New York is going to be your territory. And they're like, how do you feel about New York? And I was like, I don't know. I've never been there. I was like, but I'll try anything. I was like, so let's do it. And so I, of course, took the job. And the moment I touched down into Old LaGuardia, not New LaGuardia, Old LaGuardia, I knew I was home. I just was so captivated by the energy of New York. It was gritty, it was fast. There is an intangible energy when you touch down in New York. It's an intangible energy. And at that very moment, I knew I was home. And so I spent about 2.5 years on the road teaching all over the country as far as like how credit worked, the myths, misconceptions, misunderstandings. And I had hit a point where I said, I can't do this anymore. And really, it was either I moved to New York or I couldn't continue down the path I was going down. And I really wanted to be here. So, very long story short, I had the opportunity to move here with the old firm that I used to represent, and I never looked back. It was everything it was supposed to be, and then some. I love being here in New York.
I mean, honestly, when you mentioned you lived in New York, I just assumed you were there all your life. You have that personality. You have
Totally, right?
You do have that personality. So when you said you found your match, I'm like, yeah, you found your match. Absolutely. So you're at your old firm. So what made you decide to leave your old firm?
So when I left, it was a pull. I had a pull to do something bigger. And I still remember the moment in time when it had happened. So I'm sure, as you remember, COVID was a big deal, right? A lot of transitions happened for a lot of people. And during COVID, my position within the organization changed. So, right, for the first 5.5 years with the company, I was traveling all over and I was meeting businesses face to face. Well, when COVID happened, I was now sitting behind a desk and I was talking to the consumer, and as well as still business to business, but it gave me an opportunity to test my knowledge, and it gave me the opportunity also to see who I was impacting and at what magnitude. And so I still remember the case that I was working on. And this case that I was working on, I helped a couple get into their dream home without even going through credit restoration at all. I had gotten so savvy with my credit knowledge that I was able to say, do this, do this, do this, do this, move 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 this. And boom, it like within 30 days, right? We waited for everything to organically update. And sure enough, we got the scores we needed and the loan closed. And it was at that moment, that boost of confidence that I got from having done that for that client. And they were so grateful. And I was just like, I was meant to do this on a much bigger scale because I care so deeply about individuals and I believe in right customizing everything because credit is truly a fingerprint. And a lot of companies, they might start out with maybe a good idea, but so many companies I feel like lose their way because they start to all of a sudden the consumer becomes a number to them. And so I felt like there was a loss of personal touch in this industry. And so I was like, I'm going to create something where not only the employees that work for me feel like $1 million, but I'm going to create something too where the consumer feels like $1 million. Like they're number one, like building a world-class customer service team. So I said, I have no idea how to run a company. I have no idea even how the other half of this business works, right? Because I was on the front end. I didn't know how the back end of credit restoration worked. I had no clue. And so I just buckled down. I spent the very little money that I had at the time on education. And I said, I'm going to do this. And it was just a pull. I just knew I was, just like I knew I was supposed to be in New York, I knew I was supposed to start this company. And so that's when I started planning my exit. And I think something for all of our audience to listen to is that be very strategic about planning your exit from your 9 to 5. Don't quit your 9 to 5 until right your other thing can pay your bills. And so I had built a platform, right? I knew what I was doing. So I worked pro bono for a year, but I just knew this was my destiny. This was my calling.
Absolutely. And you mentioned some small but important details. So for
Sure.
your story, because listeners, she's successful. In your story, you transitioned from something that was essentially aligned from your work into the new business. And then you said you worked pro bono for the first year?
I did. I did. I was
That
not willing to test on my clients. I was not willing to do that. I'm not that kind of person. I just can't.
No, I hear you. And I'm glad you mentioned that part because, we both know, me and you in this space, there are 101 influencers that are saying, quit your job, go start a business on the side, go start what, right? That's just everywhere, right? And
Everywhere.
and one thing that and I have no problem saying this, I fell into that trap. I fell into
Yeah.
that trap of oh, quit your job, do this, you can do whatever you want, whatever. And one thing that I would do differently is, at least for my first business that I tried and it failed, I should have just transitioned to what I had already had been doing. I had been
Yeah.
doing legal sales for the last 10 years. So I had
Hmm.
plenty of opportunity to go and stay in that niche, but I didn't. I tried something completely different, and I wasn't able to. I feel like it's a lot harder to build the audience when you
Yes.
transition industries when you're starting
Sure.
entrepreneurship compared to what you did, and even with that advantage that you had over me, you still decided to work for free, listeners, for free for a full year to not
Hmm.
test on your clients, to make sure that you're providing the A1 service, I'm sure, and to make sure that you can compete in the space. And
Yes.
a lot of I wish I was told that in the beginning, because I had so many people tell me, no, charge right away, you charge right away. And especially in the space we are,
Yeah.
it's very competitive and it's very built on trust.
Yes.
So it didn't work out for me. It didn't work out for me. I had to kind
Sure.
of listen to people in the space. And then I
Right.
realized, okay, no, like exactly what you just said. So I know that's a
Yeah.
side tangent, but as a business literacy podcast as well, I love to push people into entrepreneurship for my own reasons, but that's important, listeners. Like, make sure that you're financially secure enough to make
Yep.
that transition, because for every one person like we go over here, we got 10 people who do it incorrectly, and then they find themselves in $50,000 in debt, and then they got to come to one of us too, like to
Yep.
get them out of it. So,
Yes,
so,
exactly.
okay. So you start your own business, and let the listeners know the name of the business again.
Absolutely. So it's Micah Abigail. And if you want to throw in the LLC, you certainly can.
Got Abigail. And when was Micah Abigail started?
2021 of June.
Got you. So you've been doing this a little, you're pulling up on your 5-year anniversary.
Of being open to the public. Yes, we're coming up on 5 years. So technically, right, I've been doing this on my own for 6, but I've been in this space for coming up on 13 years almost.
Got you. So 13 years
Yeah.
experience. So that's 5 times more than me. So that makes she's 5 times more knowledgeable than me, listener. So that's why I'm deferring to her. But anyway, so here's a fun question. Speaking on business and that, describe the very first. Let's go more into depth of that first year. You mentioned that you worked pro bono. You mentioned you didn't know how to run a business. You mentioned that you spent the last of your little bit of money on educating and investing yourself. Explain, if you had to give a summary of that first year in business, how was it for you?
The first year in business was like nothing I could even describe because it was such a steep learning curve. But here's what I will tell you is that when you're in alignment with your purpose, you're going to have energy that you can't explain. I would hop out of bed at 4 o'clock in the morning, so excited and ready to start my day. And it was unbelievable to the forces. So they always say too, when you're in alignment with your purpose, people that you just never expected to help you just out of nowhere, people you didn't even know liked you or were watching, they come out of nowhere to help you and to support you. And I was just amazed. So it was just awe factor after awe factor. And again, I'm in alignment with my purpose, right? Like my mission was clear. People knew, right? I was in it to do the right thing. But the learning curve was so utterly deep and so utterly steep. So when I was doing everything, I was doing everything. And as every entrepreneur does, right? I was doing things that were very antiquated and right? So I had a pretty substantial client base within my first year and I was doing everything. And it was so funny because I would even take every single letter to the actual post office, stand in line for certified mail. And people, when they saw me coming, they're like, oh my God, she's going to be here for an hour. Because I would have a stack of letters that were 2 feet high. And they're like, you've got to be kidding me. So, like, to this day, I know everyone at the post office. In fact, like, I give them gifts every year for Christmas because we got super close. But it was such a steep learning curve. And I will tell you, it is entrepreneurship. So many people are saying, I want to escape from something. But you have to understand if you're going into entrepreneurship, you have to run to something, not from something, because entrepreneurship is 1,000 times harder than working for somebody else because everything lives and breathes and dies and falls and succeeds. Everything is on you. And you have to, right? Heavy is the head that wears the crown. And so, right. So it was hard. It was lonely. It was exhausting, but it was the most enthralling, most captivating, most rewarding thing I had ever done. And I love a challenge. I've always loved a challenge. And I learned things about myself that I didn't even know existed. I didn't know what I was capable of until I was tested. And so the first year was tough. I remember like I would wake up in the morning and I had sandpaper in my eyes. I couldn't afford a nice computer yet. So I had a tiny little laptop. I didn't even have a mouse. So I was like, if anybody can see me, if they're not, if they're not listening, they're watching. But I literally like was moving my hand over this little mouse on my little laptop. And I gave myself such bad carpal tunnel. Like in the morning, my hands would be closed and I couldn't open them. It would take me like a half an hour to open my hands in the morning because of all the mailing and the typing and it was just like the things I did. But I just was so grateful to be on the path that I was because every person I helped, it was like, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. And then I mean, what more could you ask for? Putting somebody on a better trajectory, on their life. So the first year it was surreal.
Absolutely. And yeah, I'm it's always like that no matter what you do in business. It's that first year, it's just like, oh man, all the doubts, all the challenges,
Oh,
all the steep learning
yeah.
curves, like you mentioned. Absolutely. So
Yeah.
you hinted
And
earlier.
the doubts never go away, by the way.
Oh yeah, so true. The doubt. That's what I learned. I'm a couple years into it. I'm like, man, I thought I'd kind of be a little. It's not that I'm not more confident, but I'm just like, man, I thought I get it. I thought I would know it all, and that would be make me more calmer. And even though I know more, it hasn't. There's always learning. There's always learning in life in general, but especially in business, you're always learning.
Yeah,
You're always
always.
learning. So you hinted earlier that you had a moment where you were helping somebody. You didn't need to do credit restoration. You just had them do a few tricks, and we'll call them tricks, and
Hmm.
they were able to get a mortgage. So was that what kind of led you to decide that you want to specifically help, or kind of that was your niche, is helping people with their credit so they can end up buying homes?
So I really enjoyed the mortgage industry and having built so many partnerships with so many loan officers and understanding their world and understanding the nuances that go into the mortgage industry. Like, if I can help you get a house, I can help you get anything. So, again, I love a good challenge. And the home market, I think, is so critical to be a part of. And the reason why is because that's right. When we talk about people losing significant amounts of money and not being able to build wealth, it's from the big ticket items. It's not because you went and spent $8 at Starbucks. It's because, right, you spent way too much money trying to get this home way too fast because the credit wasn't fixed. And now you're paying $1,000 a month more than you needed to. And that's what keeps people stuck. And so I think that's really what attracted me to the mortgage industry, was that it was just going to have such a magnificent impact on people's lives. Getting a home, one, can be the American dream. But if you do it the wrong way, it can be the American drain, if you ask me. So it's really something I'm super passionate about because, one, I love helping loan originators too. They're amazing to work with. So are real estate agents and their customers. I mean, it's a really great industry overall. If you can help people do things the right way, it's very gratifying.
I feel that, as I help people get out of debt, and by coaching, primarily education, no specific like programs and stuff like that, but I help
Sure.
people. And one thing I kind of feel that is universal is the goal of buying a home.
Yeah,
That's universal. So
sure.
I help people get out of debt, and it's for them, they want to buy a home, but I don't help
Mhm.
people do like with the strategy in mind of helping them get a home. You kind of do, from the outset, you get a client, or it sounds like you get a client that comes in and it's just like, hey, I'm in the process of buying a home, but my
Mhm.
credit is not where it needs to be. Explain to
Mhm.
the listeners what's the if there is any differences, what are the unique challenges of doing credit restoration or credit repair or credit improvement with the intention of buying a home relatively soon, compared to coming to somebody like me who's just like, Darrin, I have a credit score of 500 and I just want to get rid of debt. Like, what's the differences between the two?
Absolutely. So the mortgage industry has a very strong set of criteria in order to get approved for a home. So they're going to be looking at income, right? So income is a factor, right, that I can't obviously assist with. And they're also going to be looking at assets. They're going to be looking at your debt to income ratio. They're going to be looking at your documents and all these little nuances that go into the mortgage industry to make sure that you're a qualified buyer. So the credit component is challenging because, one, there's so much misinformation out there. So one of the biggest myths that we dispel for people. So number one, they need to be talking to somebody like you. Knock out your debt because if you're not knocking out your debt, that means your credit score is suffering. 30% of your entire credit score comes from how you manage your credit cards. And if your utilization is high, that means your score is low, which means that everything you borrow is going to cost you a heck of a lot more. And so we always say work with you first, and then now you need to understand the nuances of the mortgage industry. And so the mortgage industry has very specific algorithms that they use to calculate the credit score, right? So a lot of people are privy to their bank app. They might be looking at Credit Karma. Credit Karma is one of the biggest, right? So the easiest way for me to explain to people where to find your correct credit score, just know this: whoever pulls your credit score, that's your score with them and them alone. Scores are not transferable. So if you get a car loan, that's your car loan score. If you go to apply for a mortgage, that's your mortgage score. If you're looking at your credit card or your bank app, that's your credit card app. If you're looking at Credit Karma, no one's using that score. So that's number one, right? So knowing, right, where your starting point is in regards to your credit score. Because obviously, so the one thing that people just don't realize is most people that we talk to, they're just wanting to get approved. And we're like, that's not good enough. You need to get approved at a great rate. And
Right.
yep. And so what we're seeing is that people who are applying for homes, they're actually being priced out of homes, not just because of the price of the home, but their scores aren't high enough. And we're seeing insurance is becoming a major factor, right? So your homeowner's insurance is going to be dictated from your credit score. So you could be spending thousands more a year on your homeowner's insurance, right? And so all these little factors get pushed into the mortgage. And so a lot of people think that they're ready to rock and roll, but in actuality, they're not, because they're either misinformed or not informed at all. So you got to know where your credit score is. You got to plan for taxes. You got to plan for insurance. You got to plan for a rainy day, right? Because when you get a home, everything's on you. But from a credit standpoint, what's really interesting about our industry, so a lot of the charlatans that play in credit repair, our loan originators will give us horror story after horror story after horror story. People that don't do credit restoration the legal and the right way, so all of this stuff will come off the credit report quickly because they'll falsely claim, let's say, identity theft, right? So it might come off quickly, but then all of a sudden, right, it all pops back on. So they go to get their home and the lender goes to repull the credit and the score is horrific. We have a lot of clients on our program that had this exact experience where they went to someone, paid them a ton of money to clean up their credit. They did it illegally. And then everything came back onto the credit report and then some. And so we see that a lot. The other thing that we see is that, right, so when you go after negative items, what happens is people that don't understand the credit repair space, they will dispute items. So, right, so you send your investigation letter to the credit bureaus, to the creditors. The creditors and the credit bureaus are the ones that place dispute verbiage on the negative items, right? Because that's part of the law. So when something is in dispute, what happens is it stops calculating into the score. And so the problem is people will pull up a score and they're like, oh, perfect, the client's fixed, not realizing that it's just a false inflation from the dispute verbiage. So they're like, oh, cool, go back to your lender, you're ready to go. When in actuality, they haven't removed anything. So the lender is like, cool, well, we have to remove the dispute verbiage because underwriting won't allow us to close a loan with dispute verbiage on it. And so they remove the dispute verbiage, the scores go right back down again. And then everybody's like, wait a second, I just paid all that money. I waited all that time, right? The credit person said I was good to go. And so people who jump into this space, not knowing a thing about the mortgage industry and AU and DU and underwriting and just all these little nuances, bank overlays, right? They really can do a major disservice to the consumer. Not to mention, right, are you targeting the things that would potentially cause them not to get through underwriting, right? So there's certain things that can't be on a credit report. And so I would say for anyone obviously looking to get a mortgage, a great place to start, know your credit score. I have a great place for everyone to go. There's no affiliation whatsoever. But if you go to myfico, myfico.com, you can get access to your mortgage score. And it's a soft pull, it doesn't impact you at all. And you can see, so you have to access 5, 4, and 2, right? Those are the mortgage algorithms. And then you can see essentially where you're at. They have a little mortgage calculator in there. And then, you can start talking to lenders if you feel like you're ready to get a pre-qualification. But start with at least knowing where you're at, knowing what's on the credit report. Don't go by Credit Karma. Don't go by Experian. Don't go by any of that stuff, right? So that's step number one.
Okay, so you actually almost beat me to this question, but anyways. So if you're, let's just say I'm a client. Let's just say I have a credit score. Let's go okay credit score. Okay credit score. Let's go with 670.
Okay.
And I'm over here in good old California, which is probably just as difficult as in good old New York and buying a house at this point.
You're more expensive, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, yeah. Thank you. So that motivated. So that's so perfect. You just beat me to it. So I'm gonna ask you a 2-part question. Part 1, I'm demotivated. I'm like, dang, I'm in California. A basic 4-bedroom, 2-bed house is $1 million, and I got all these debt issues. How would you keep someone like me motivated? I'm over here. I got a 680, let's say $10,000 in credit card debt. I'm a willing student, but I'm just like, man, like I'm in California. These are $1 million houses. Like, how do you keep me motivated?
So I guess for me, motivation isn't something I can't give you motivation unless I understand your reasoning for actually wanting to move. So I mean, really, I'd have to turn it back to you as the customer. And I need to know what your driving force is in the beginning. So for me, if we're going back to a client and if they've ever entered our program to begin with, we already know their driving factors. We already know you've got 2 kids, you're trying to build a legacy, and you understand the importance of building equity. You understand the importance of having a place to call your own. You understand that the rental market's very unstable. So you've already told us everything that is painful for you, that if you were to have a home and you were to become a homeowner, what other doors that would open up for you and for your family. So really it's a reminder of, right? So we always say, right, there's always going to be a price that you pay, right? So you just have to decide which one it is, right? So which one is going to essentially cost you more, right? So that's the one thing that people have to sit with, and I think that's such a personal thing, right? Motivation is something that's different for everybody. And so whatever that driving factor is for you to want to make that change, we would urge you to go back to that. Remember, like, so if you were to stay exactly the same, right? And so let's just say in a year from now, envision your life. And if you're exactly where you are right now, or maybe a little worse off, how are you going to feel? How long have you been waiting on the sideline to do XYZ? And I feel like that's the way to motivate people, is just remind them of why they said, hey, this is why I want to do this in the first place. And again, it's so personal, it really is so personal. Everybody's so different. Some people have no desire to buy a house. There are a few select people that just have no desire. So
Yeah,
it's really all about your personal testimony and story.
absolutely. So my follow-up question, or a different question, is FICO. Good old FICO. We talk about it on the show. I've made listeners, there's so many episodes you can go back to where I break down FICO, and I call them the big 5, the 5 main factors. So my audience should know this, but I'm gonna ask you: is there any uniqueness, or let me reframe the question? If you have to give like the most important factor, or at least a couple most important factors when it comes to FICO, when it comes to mortgages and trying to get that approval or fix your credit for that, what are those factors, and how can people
Sure.
prove those factors?
Absolutely. So the 2 biggest things, and this actually goes into it's all encompassing. So whether it's FICO, it's Vantage, it doesn't matter what algorithm is being utilized. The principles remain the same. You have to build classic and timeless habits. No matter who's pulling your credit, it's really always going to be the same. So even in our business courses, right, the number one factor that is driving your score is your payment history. That's your number one factor. So I teach people, so the higher you are, the harder you fall. And so I teach this in my class for impact, but if you have a true 850 and you miss one payment on a credit card, your score will drop 180 points.
Whew.
And that late payment will stay with you for a full 7 years and really does damage for the next 6.5. And so the number one factor, so what people have to understand about credit is this, is credit, the whole purpose of it is they're trying to determine your likelihood of default. So when you miss a payment, it's not a small mistake. To a lender, it's red flag, hold everything. What's going on with this person? Because they don't know. Did you just get sick? Did you just lose your job? Did you just go belly up and decide, I'm not going to pay my bills anymore? So to them, they're like, no, this person's extremely risky. So people have to understand that missing payments is one of by far the biggest mistakes that you will ever make. So we say, right, an ounce of prevention is worth more than a pound of cure. And so we tell everyone, put everything you own on auto pay. Make sure there's enough money in the bank to cover the bare minimum, right? Whether it's car loans, credit cards, mortgages, things of that nature. Just make sure there's enough in the bank. And if there's not, then get on the phone quickly with the lender and let them know, hey, this is what's going on. The problem is people are avoiding the situation, thinking it's going to get better. And it's not. Just communicate, right? Communication is everything. And so make sure that you make those payments on time, because the problem is when I teach my real estate agents and my loan originators, like I did 2 massive classes yesterday, and I asked my loan originators, I'm like, how many points do you think a score drops? And like 20, 30. I'm like, how long do you think it takes to recover? 2 months, 3 months, right? It's not their job to understand this stuff. So we as consumers, we have to protect ourselves with everything we have. And so, and again, remember that stays with you for 7 whole years. Those are the rules, right? I didn't write the rules. Don't get mad at me. Just learn how to effectively play within the lines. And the other variable that is the strongest. So, right, you've got your payment history. The other variable is credit cards. So credit cards are one of my biggest pet peeves, but they're one of the greatest gifts, right? So I love my credit cards. I use my credit cards for absolutely everything. But what you have to know about credit cards is credit cards are not meant to live off of. Credit cards are there to show, right, to whom, right? So to manage a little, right? If you can manage a little, you'll be given more. And so the expectation with credit cards is how you manage this is how you're going to manage everything else, is the way that FICO basically looks at it, right? So using a little bit, paying it off, that's all we're really supposed to be doing with these credit cards. It's just to show that we're capable of being responsible and we're good stewards with what we have. And so when we max out our credit cards, again, with that being 30% of the entire credit score, you're going to see a massive dip in your scores. And I'll give you an example. I had a woman in my program. She's a friend of mine, and she came to me and she had a couple of inaccuracies on the credit report. We got them cleaned up. And she's texting me and she's like, I don't understand. Why am I still at a 590? And I was like, because your credit cards are all over the limit. I'm like, this is literally how badly it's impacting you, is you have no negatives. Your credit cards are keeping you at the 590. She's like, okay. She's like, I'm coming up on a bunch of big closings. She's a real estate agent. And she's like, I'm going to pay them all off. And so sure enough, right, she pays everything off. She went from a 590 to an 801.
Wow. Woo.
Yeah.
Yeah. Congratulations to her. And no, I figured you would answer that way, but I'm glad that it's aligned true. Like, listeners, coming from someone who helps people buy houses, this is it. You need to do exactly this is what I've been preaching on episode after episode. And one thing I say too is you mentioned it. People, when they can't pay, they don't communicate. And what I explain to people is, imagine if you're the lender. Imagine if you're lending your friend, it doesn't have to be a lot of money, $100. And and your friend agrees that they're gonna pay you $25 per month for 4 months. And then that friend on the second payment just doesn't pay you. They just they don't communicate with you, they don't give you a heads up, they just don't pay you. How would you feel? Or most importantly, would you lend them more money moving the next time, like the next time they ask for it? Because especially that demographic of people, they're going to ask again. They're going to ask
Yeah.
again. Like, so it's so important to make those payments on time, if heck, a little bit early if possible. And if you
Yeah.
can't, make a minimum, like make what you can. Make what you
Yeah.
can. Because my understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, is there's an actual difference in marking on your credit report. So there's a successful on time payment, there's a payment, like a partial payment, and then there's the missed payment where you pay nothing, and then there's actually time lengths according to the payment. So it's my understanding is it's worse to miss 90 days than it is 30 days. It actually impacts you more and more the later you are.
Oh, yes.
That's my understanding. Okay. So that's
Absolutely.
so listeners, I get it. Things come up, emergency happens, but if you can't make the full payment, call the lender up. Especially if it's like your first time, you have good history, they'll probably work with you. They'll probably give you some type of option. But if they won't or they can't, then just make a partial payment. Like, it's better than nothing. It is better than nothing. It's going to look a lot better on your credit report. I do look at credit reports, those behemoths. So, and I'm sure, so shout out to you guys who's doing it on a way bigger scale. Those behemoths of your real credit report, and it lists right there. It'll say missed payment, 60 days, 30 days, 90 days, and stuff like that. So just wanted to make sure the listeners know if you can't make the full payment, it's better to make a partial payment. And I'm sure that's especially true with your actual mortgage. So when I owned a home, that was the number one thing that I made sure got paid. And I had a lot of debt at one point, is I made sure that my mortgage got paid in full, because you don't want that mark to be missed or partial. That's going to look bad and stuff like that. So I know offline you mentioned some news about, I believe, Vantage, or there was some news that just came out. So do you want to explain to the listeners what that news is?
Absolutely. Yes. Breaking news, everybody. So, so yesterday, the mortgage industry was in an uproar. And to me, this was old news, because I had spoken to Fox Business about this already. I had been teaching and telling all my loan originators, guys, this is coming down the pipe. This is coming down the pipe. And so essentially, a new algorithm has just been dropped into the mortgage industry. So this was already adopted, and this was adopted earlier last year. So we have Vantage 4.0. So for the first time in history, Vantage is now a player in the mortgage industry. And so basically, I want to summarize this. So the headline that was selling like hotcakes is, oh my gosh, it's going to be so easy for you to get a home now, because they're going to include your rental history and your credit score. Fannie and Freddie are now including these things. And so what I want people to understand is, so here's what Vantage 4.0 is. So listen, the algorithms have been around since 1989. Okay. They are very old. They're very antiquated. This is not news. So they've been working on these algorithms for a very long time. And so obviously, to put things into play, practice all these, it takes time. So Vantage 4.0 was designed to be more inclusive. And so what they're saying is, with Vantage 4.0, 33 million Americans are going to receive a credit score with the new algorithm. Now, the caveat obviously is, right, that doesn't mean approval. And that's where people get really tripped up. They think that, oh, because I'm going to have a mortgage score, that means that I'm going to get approved. Guys, no, that's not how it works. People are freaking out. Oh, the mortgage industry is in trouble. No, it's not, because all of the guidelines are still in place. I remember the podcast of yours that I listened to, which was great. You talked about, right, the banks and what happened in 2008, 2009. Right. That's not going to happen again. Right. We have all the guardrails in place. They're not sloppy anymore. The banks have skin in the game. Right. We're not selling off these insane loans to Wall Street with no repercussion. Like, that's not going to happen again. And so we have all the guardrails in place, but literally what this is just, these algorithms are designed to be more inclusive. So someone who, let's just say, abstains from credit cards, right, but they've been paying rent on time, utilities on time, they're going to get credit for having been disciplined for X amount of time. And this is going to show up on the credit report. But the thing to be aware of now, if it shows on the credit report, remember, the good, you get the good with the bad. So if you miss payments, guess what? What do you think is going to happen to the credit score? So you're going to take the good with the bad here. So basically, how we're explaining it to people is, if you have good credit now, you're going to have even better credit with Vantage 4.0. If you have bad credit, you could potentially have even worse credit. And so Vantage 4.0, the original FICO scoring models, they really all look at the data very similarly, right? So the two biggest factors are still going to be payment history and utilization. So those are the two biggest factors still. So change nothing about your habits, right? So if you're wondering, right, if your lender is using this model, so publicly, there are only two lenders that have said, yes, we are using this model. There's a list. There's 21 lenders that are in the pilot program, but there's only two that are actually given to the public, which is the two largest players in the game, which is Rocket Mortgage and PennyMac. So they are the only two that the public is aware of. So it'll be very interesting to see who else adopts these. And the funny thing is, so I was just having some sidebar conversations with some of my LOs, but UWM is a major contender. So I'll be interested to see if they end up adopting it as well, because they go head to head with Rocket Mortgage. So it'll be really interesting to see what exactly happens and if they also adopt the newest algorithm. But at the end of the day, build timeless habits, regardless of the algorithm that's pulling your score. Understand, right? This doesn't mean approval. This doesn't mean anything except for more inclusion. That's all that it is. And they have said, the proverbial they, that what's going to happen is that more people should get approved and less people should actually default. The algorithms are pretty smart. We've got a lot more technology embedded in them. And so we should see more approvals and less defaults. Hopefully that's the talk, that's the hope, but we won't know until all of the data comes out.
Of course, of course. So we're down to our last few minutes. So before I let you go and go about your busy day, I have one final question. I was snooping around your social media and you didn't tell me you had a podcast of your own. So
I do.
I believe it's called Rebuild and Rise.
It is. It is. It's called Rebuild and Rise. Yes.
So tell the audience about your podcast.
Absolutely. So it's really all about, have you heard of the word anti-fragility?
Yes.
So anti-fragility is something that it's kind of my life story. So people who have taken hardships and turned it into their testimony and they've become better because of it. We talk about just the people who are literally rebuilding and rising, right? Just rise. And I feel like that's every person on this planet who's walking, breathing, and talking. And I just want to expose those stories because I really do feel like it's our mission in life to share our testimonies with others, right? Because we've been given so much grace. And like you said, for every one of me, there's 10 others who aren't sober, right? So it's my duty, my mission to share positive, uplifting stories to help people understand, like, hey, there's a path. And it's really just about helping people find a better path. And sometimes you just need to hear that other people are struggling and that there is a way out. And so there's a lot of information on the mortgage industry, credit industry, a lot of finance tips, but we also include fitness and just everyday people. And it's my favorite thing because everyday people are what make this world go round.
Absolutely. So listeners, go check out that podcast. I saw a couple of clips. I'm like, all right, save.
Thank you so much.
No problem. So where else can people find you, or how can someone can reach out to you?
Absolutely. So our website, if you ever have questions on credit, you can go to www.micaabigail.com. Sorry, I'm old school. I still do the www. My goodness. Wow, that shows my age. So you can find me at mileabigail.com. Fit Credit Doctor is my Instagram. Micah Smith is my Facebook. Micah Abigail LLC. You can find us on Instagram as well as on Facebook. Rebuild on Rise is on Apple, Spotify, as well as on iHeartRadio, YouTube. We try to update. And otherwise, if you have questions, reach out to us on any of those platforms. We're extremely responsive.
All right, you guys. Micah, thank you so much for gracing us on our show. You guys, check her out. She's great. She's a wealth of information. I'm good about the basics, but if you want somebody who like, hey, Darrin, I want to buy a home in a year or two, come through me first. But then when you get to that, maybe I need some assistance or whatever. I'm going to pass the rock over to her because she knows what she's doing. She's great, you guys. So
you're the perfect starting point.
Absolutely. So thank you again for joining the show. You guys, this has been Financial State of Mind. And I'm your host, Darrin Harvey. This is a show where we help you get to that bag, manage that bag, grow that bag so you can buy a house by talking about financial and business literacy and anything and everything to do with the power of the dollar. You have been watching this on KGPC 96.9 FM, streaming right now on kgpc969.org and available on all streaming platforms of choice as a podcast. All right, everybody, take care.
Thank you so much for listening to this podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please hit like and subscribe. And if there's someone you know that this would help, please share this with them. If you are looking to fix and repair your credit, you can find us at www.micaabigail.com. And if you're looking for more personal stories on myself, you can find me at Fit Credit Doctor. Thanks again for joining, and God bless.